Now joining us on the hotline to do a little NCAA tournament talk is the head coach of St. Louis, and that is Jim Cruz. Coach, welcome back to the program. It's Zach and Chase. Thanks for a few minutes. How are you?
I'm doing great, you guys. How are you guys doing today?
Well, we're doing great. It's actually snowing here in Philadelphia, and it's spring, so we don't like that.
You got plenty of it this winter.
Yeah, we definitely did. So you had a lot of great NCAA tournaments, whether it was when you were a player at Indiana, a coach at Evansville, or even with Rick Majerus at St. Louis. Yesterday, that was just such a thrilling moment, seeing the Hunter father and son combination hit that big shot. Dad falls out of his chair, sitting on that stool. Was there ever one moment in particular for you, whether it was a player or whether it was as a head coach or an assistant coach, that you either fell out of your chair or just jumped out of your shorts in excitement?
I don't know about that. We kind of had a game like that when we played, when we were at Evansville. We played Oregon State and Gary Payton. It was Coach Miller's last game. Since we won, it was Coach Miller's last game, and it was an overtime game, and we had a kid kind of just pull up and hit a 8-footer right in someone's face, and I think we won by 1 or 2 in that game, so that was thrilling. Father-sons worked out pretty good yesterday with last shots, actually, with Ron and the Alfords. Wow.
How about that?
Yeah, it was really something remarkable. And these 14 seeds in the last few years have just have a knack for taking down these 3 seeds. Yesterday, UAB takes down Iowa State. We also mentioned Georgia State taking down Baylor. What is it with these 14 seeds these days in NCAA basketball taking down these 3s?
Well, I think a couple things. I think people look at the seeds, and in my opinion, I mean, if you're the first seed, the first 1 or 2 seeds, and sometimes part of 3, but those first 2 seeds, you know, they're better than most. They're just better than most. Doesn't mean they can't get beat, because they do. But I mean, they're better than most. But between 3 and 14 to 15. There's not much difference, and you really think about it, what are we talking about? Okay, we're talking about the team that's ranked 15th in the country compared to 41st in the country. Well, when you start thinking about 40 teams, there's not much difference, and it's the same thing on the bottom half in terms of teams that get in. You look at the Texas, the Indianas, the UCLAs, where people were debating and everything, and I think a lot of times people say, well, okay, UCLA, you know, they won, so now they deserve to be in. Maybe they say the opposite about Texas. You get in because of what you did during the year. And it doesn't have anything to do with it, because there's another 20 teams that could come in there, and they might have won a game too. So it's based on your season. So I think people try to justify the NCAA's decisions in terms of what people do during the tournament. And I think that's totally going down the wrong road on that, really.
Yeah, and a lot of people around here in Philadelphia think that Temple should be in the big dance, but they can't do anything about it as they're number 1 seed now in the NIT, as we're talking to Jim Cruz. Coach, you keep such a keen eye on the basketball, on college basketball, and the tournament is so special. The aura around it is like no other. But do coaches fill out brackets this time of year?
Not to my knowledge. I mean, when my kids were about 8 and 10 years old, we did. And I never won in our house, so that's how great the tournament is.
It's always the office secretary winning it.
All bets are off when the tournament starts. They really are.
No doubt about it. So I'm going to pose this question for you. If you could take the Kentucky Wildcats or the Field to raise the trophy come April 6th, which one are you taking, Coach?
Oh, I'm not a very good gambler. I would take the Field. I'd take the Field. Kentucky's a great team. They've had a great year, and they might have an unbelievable year if they win the national championship. But you know, the thing that some of the advantages you got, you know, the difference sometimes is the shot clock. The shot clock favors teams with the best talent, and obviously Kentucky has the best talent. I mean, what people say, they got 3 lottery picks, so that's pretty impressive. So, because the more possessions you have, the better the talent is in favor. And so Kentucky is favored, but again, there's a lot of things. You're playing on neutral floors. The officiating will be the best in the NCAA tournament. Not that they won't make a mistake, but the officials are the best. If the officials don't have a good game, they don't want to advance either. So they're right on top of things. They want to advance as the teams do. So there's nothing with home crowd what conference you're in, all that stuff with officiating too. So there's a lot of neutrality. And then when you're the top dog, everyone says, and I'm sure the players think, the only thing that they can have a great season, which is not really true, but that's what they kind of think, and even probably the players, maybe Coach Cal, is if they win the national championship. And so Kentucky is the only team that has tremendous pressure on besides everyone else.
You've dealt with that pressure as Jim Cruz is our guest right now, obviously to a lesser extent just the way that media has been, but you did go undefeated once when you were at Indiana in 1976 under Coach Bobby Knight. What advice would you give to Kentucky about trying to complete perfection?
Well, again, we certainly weren't trying to lose, but that wasn't our number one thing. The only thing that we had not done is win the national championship. We had won 4 Big Ten championships. We've been to the Final Four. We've done everything. The only thing that was left with our class was to win the national championship. So, ironically, we go in the tournament undefeated. So, again, we're a little bit in Kentucky's mode in terms of the whole thing is to win the national championship. And, it's interesting. I can remember sitting there before the game, and we're playing Michigan. Michigan's in the Big Ten. Indiana's in the Big Ten. And this is the third time that we're going to play Michigan. And I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, you know what? We know we're better than Michigan. Michigan knows that we're better than Michigan. Everybody in the country knows we're better than Michigan. And we in the locker room, we know Michigan can beat us. They can because they're really good. And I thought, wow, we go 4 years and we just get beat the wrong time at the wrong game. That'll be disappointing. So it's hard. It's a hard thing. I think winning the national championship was more of a relief for our team. I think the joy was going to the Final Four and winning Big Ten championships. We had great joy for that. But winning the national championship is a little bit of a relief.
Someone was talking about Coach Knight yesterday. I was having a conversation with someone, and they were wondering if Coach Knight, because he had a very intense style that we don't see from some of these coaches now in basketball just because of the culture of children that they have to coach, if he could now recruit as a head coach and still bring in that top talent players. Do you think he could still recruit the top talent player if he was still on a college sideline?
Yeah, I think so. I think competitive kids want to go to competitive situations. So I think that always attracted him. And, Coach was always going to take guys. He might not have, he had really, really good talent, always. But, he might not have the best talent always, because he's going to put a lot of things into it in terms of what kind of character and graduation and the values, and he wanted to match the values. And just because someone had different values didn't mean they're a bad guy. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that Indiana believed in some values and that they believed in, and he wanted to have a good match, and he did a great job of matching that up with the system of play and system of the program, values of the program.
We're talking to Jim Cruz right now on the Main Event, WHIP Radio in Philadelphia. And, Coach, the interesting thing to me when it comes down to the tournament is that these teams are preparing for these teams that they really never play, and the turnaround is very quick. Can you just take us through the itinerary of having to play a game and then possibly preparing for an opponent either the next day or the day after that?
Well, I think what comes down to, I think coaches go through a lot of mental gymnastics, emotional gymnastics, and preparation gymnastics, and they're going to go through all these things, all these variables to put themselves in a position to be successful. But when it comes down to it, as soon as they start meeting the team, they come down that we're going to do about 2 or 3 things at the most. And all those great ideas that everyone had in the war room, as some people call it, the preparation room, those are thrown out because it's too much, because the turnover is too quick, and you've worked so hard to get to that point, and you've developed habits to get to that point, and you just got to rely on your habits, and you got to go out and play, because you don't want guys to be indecision and be overthinking. They build up habits, try to create the habits, or put themselves in the situation where they don't have to overthink it, because they've done that all year long. And it's a survive thing. It's during the year you're always trying to build and develop a mentality and an attitude. Those things are out the window when you get in the tournament. When you get in the tournament, you're just trying to win and survive and move on and go to the next day. Because during the year, you got to keep building that mentality. During the tournament, it's one and done. So that's what makes it beautiful.
There was a controversial moment yesterday with the referees in the SMU-UCLA game where a goaltending call decided a three-point basket to go in when Moreira interfered with the basketball. There was a lot of replays. I didn't think the shot had any chance of going in. Do you think the refs got that one right? Was that goaltending? And would you like to see an expansion of replay as a coach?
Actually, I did not even see that. I heard about it, but I never did see the replay. I never saw the replay. So on that. My thing is this, with officials. I think a lot of people say it, and announcers say it, coaches might say it. They don't want the referees deciding the game. If you don't call a foul or don't call the violation, the refs are deciding the play. The play is decided. They either walked, goaltended, fouled, didn't foul. Just call what it is. Because if they decide not to call, people think, well, if they make the call, the referees decided it. Well, if they don't make it, and if it was a violation, they did decide it also. And so I'm just saying, play the rules how it is from the first minute to the last minute, and that's how it is. But I did not actually see that goaltending call.
Fair enough. The head coach of St. Louis, Jim Cruz, is our guest. When I think of the NCAA tournament, I think of a lot of good coaches, a lot of iconic moments, players that maybe you never even heard of going into the tournament. Then they have these incredible tournaments, and they go on these legendary runs. But one name I also remember is the late, great Rick Majerus, who you obviously have had a very close relationship with. And we were also talking about Bobby Knight a little bit earlier on in this interview. If you could just take one piece of advice that both Coach Knight and Coach Majerus gave to you, what was the most valuable advice those two great men gave to you?
Good question. They had so many good words of wisdom. I think from Coach Knight's standpoint, and I don't know if it was what he said, but how he did it, I don't think anyone utilized time better than he utilized time. And I'm not just talking about for work or practice. I mean, he was great at all that stuff too. But just his life, in terms of he got his money's worth every single day, and I think that's valuable in coaching. You know, a lot of people, he was kind of famous for going out hunting or going fishing and all that stuff. And sometimes people would try to use that against him. But I thought that was great because it had a little balance. And I think coaching on its face it's not a very healthy profession. And you can lose balance. I'm sure there's many other professions that are like that too. So I thought that was great because you can get some balance with that even during the season. And then with Rick, he ran practices like no other in terms of it was a clinic, and there was not a lot of reps, and there was not a lot of grind to it. But kids were really it was like mental reps. And I've never seen that before. They got more mental reps than they did physical reps. So very unique style. And it was great. But I was certainly been more than blessed to be around those two guys.
No question about that. Last one here with you, Coach. We had Phil Martelli, who you know from the A10 St. Joe's, on the show the other day, and he talked about how he thinks the Power 5 conferences are hijacking the tournament, and he also went on to say in his 25 years of coaching, he never heard of the eye test. As someone that is not in the Power 5 conference, obviously with you in the A10 with St. Louis, how much of a concern is that we're seeing teams get snubbed? And I know there's snubs every year, but now we're hearing the excuse of an eye test. It doesn't make much sense to me, Coach.
I would agree with Coach on that. I think, every league during their league meetings has someone from the NCAA or RPI, those kind of guys that do those decisions or know what's going on in those rooms. And my take on it was, I won't even be able to name all the things, but you can have, the last 10 games, you can have good wins, top 50 wins, bad losses, good win, RPI, eye test, I've seen them play. And what I hear is they can do what they want with it. They can do it. You don't have to use the RPI. You don't have to use the last 10 games. You don't have to use top 10. Each person that makes the decision, now this is how I understand it, maybe I'm wrong, but this is what I heard, is they can make the decision on whatever they want to do. And if that's true, then it's get back to what Coach says. Then it becomes political a little bit, and that's a problem.
I think you're exactly right, and I think we saw that with Temple this year because Temple was a team, they had 23 wins, they beat Kansas, not only beat Kansas as an RPI of 2 coach, you know that, they blew them out by 25 points. I just don't get how they didn't put Temple in still here on North Broad Street.
No, I agree with that totally. Here's another thing, and I don't know how it would work because I haven't thought about it, but football, 50% of the teams go to the bowl. Well, there's less than 20% that go to the NCAA tournament for basketball. That's an interesting thing right in itself, in my opinion. And, as I said earlier in the show, you could take 20 other teams, and maybe more, probably more, and they would do just fine in the tournament. They might get beat, they might win 2 games, they might go Sweet 16. You just never heard of it. It could be a Temple, it could be 20 other teams, because there's just not that much difference. Yes, the top 8 teams, top maybe 12 sometimes, 10 sometimes, yeah, they're different than everybody else. But after that, there's a slim margin between them. Slim.
It's just something about those hunger of those seeds that don't get that much respected, as we've seen it over the years with Florida Gulf Coast make a run. George Mason's made some runs. VCU. Butler got to a championship back-to-back years. So it's a great time of the year, Coach. But, yeah, we would definitely love to see Temple in here. But we appreciate you giving us a few minutes today. Thanks so much. Always fun to talk to you.
All right, have a great time, guys. Thanks a lot.
Best of luck, Coach. Thanks.
There's Coach Jim Cruz joining us on the hotline, WHIP Radio in Philadelphia, Philly's #1 college radio station. Okay, let's wrap up shop here, Chase. It's 11:55 on this Friday.